Good morning, good afternoon, as well as good evening to everybody joining today for the virtual platform for COP26. It's been organized by America is All In, US Climate Action Center. We highly respect all the organizers for giving us this opportunity and platform to talk to you about LEED communities. US Green Building Council has this program called LEED for Communities, and we would be talking to you about 3 communities that are working on various aspects of going net zero. And you'll see these examples by my 3 eminent colleagues, Monte, Erin, and Stefano, and you will see the kind of diversity of works they're doing. But at the same time, our interest is to showcase how we all are using LEED for communities as the rating system to push the discussion, push the dialogue on not only net zero, but equity, social justice, and many other aspects of it. So this is all exactly it's saying that we would want to talk about LEED for communities and show you various examples, net zero energy, carbon neutrality, net zero water, waste, and ultimately our interest is to similarly keep on showcasing 95 other projects that we are working on throughout the world. And we believe that we'll give you some interesting concepts about how LEED for communities is being used, but ultimately interest is to showcase these 3 communities that are doing so much of good work. We in this LEED for cities and communities rating system are working with a new aspect at US Green Building Council. US Green Building Council has been operating in 168 countries globally, but they are mainly known for their work on buildings. However, almost 7 years ago, we launched, 6 years ago rather, we launched a new rating system called LEED for Cities and Communities, which has 4 variants. And we'll be talking to you about 2 variants that are communities in plan and design phase and communities in existing and operating phase. Nonetheless, we have cities that are existing, many of them, and cities that are in planning and designing phase. But here we will talk about mainly communities, because that is our ultimate interest, is to keep on talking about cities and communities that are progressive, that are working on various aspects of improving their performance over time, whether they are in planning and designing phase or whether they're existing cities and communities. We work with them on all these aspects very comprehensively. As you can see, we call this a scorecard. And we also talk about performance as a prerequisite. This is a rating system lingo, but in very simple terms, you can see that we are talking about performance as a prerequisite. So as they get started on getting their city or a community certified, our interest is to really request them to start talking about their performance, take a stock of where they are, and then utilize these credits to see whether they want to improve their performance by utilizing these credits, or if at all they are already doing some good work, recognize their good work by getting credits on some of these points as well. So ultimately, you can see transportation performance, water performance, energy performance, greenhouse gas performance. We talk about solid waste performance and quality of life. You can see this comprehensive urban discussion is done here, including planning and green buildings at the top on the left, and natural systems and ecology and resilience. Our ultimate interest is to talk about progressive communities continuously improving their performance, and that is where data comes handy. That is where I think we talk about performance as an integral discussion. And at the same time here, when we are talking about communities that are in planning and designing phase, we do talk about communities trying to be very, very effective. And today you will see Monte will be talking about some of these aspects of what all they are trying to talk about, how all they are trying to create scenarios to go net zero. And my colleagues, Stefano and Erin on this panel will be talking about 2 communities that are existing and how they are trying to work with it. And Monte and Stefano's communities are mixed use development, but Erin's is an airport, but an airport as a community, integral part of an urban fabric. And that is what we would want to talk about. You can see here that ultimately our interest is to talk about any community that is an integral part of a larger urban fabric, and what they are trying to do to become an integral part of that thing. Obviously, all the aspects that you see on the screen are going to help them throughout this particular process. So with that, let me just show you a few examples, and the examples that you see here are diverse. The way I talked about Erin's community, that is towards left bottom here, we have a Universal Beijing theme park recently got certified. It is in planning and designing phase, but you can see so many other projects. This is a Guangzhou Nansha project, which is a 3 square kilometer project getting developed by the city government. This is an innovative district done by Land Lease, but that was earlier an Expo Milan project. This is a project in Brazil. This is a project in Colombia. Obviously, we have like Monte's project that you're going to see. This is a project in Dayton, Ohio, on the main. And other projects that you would want to see is some of these existing communities. You can see that developers like Boston Properties or like Howard Hughes Corporation are working with us. But at the same time, financiers like Blackstone and Ivanhoe are working on the community like Stuyvesant Town and Peter Cooper Village in Lower Manhattan that is housing 27,000 people, or Golden Triangle Business Improvement District in Washington, D.C., or National Historic Landmark, Balboa Park in San Diego, or Montclair University. You can see that all are trying to pursue LEED for community with us. And I think that is a unique aspect that I wanted to highlight, and you will see throughout these presentations. Ultimately, we have more than 130 projects certified and 245 and more projects that we are working throughout this rating system across the globe. Ultimately, our interest is to showcase the benefit of LEED as a rating system that is cutting across right from interiors of the buildings to communities, cities, and regions, and talk about carbon neutrality and many other aspects ultimately over time across this rating system. But we see that our platforms, our rating systems are very well aligned with sustainable development goals or ESG frameworks. And ESG frameworks are very useful because these communities that we are working with always are going out to get funding finances. And that's where you can see that we are trying to align our work with these frameworks. You can see Howard Hughes Corporation is a developer here in the United States. So these three inner rings that you see here are priorities of Howard Hughes Corporation on ESG, but the outer ring is the one that is showing the alignment of Howard Hughes ESG priorities with LEED for cities and communities. You can see another example of Blackstone Group, financial organization that is also talking about ESG and how it is aligned with LEED for cities and communities with the band, outermost ring here. But nonetheless, TCFD is a framework that is very widely used here in the United States to talk about financial disclosures and climate-related financial disclosures. And so we have tried to align our work with that too. And the outer two rings are talking about our LEED for cities and communities credits, whereas inner three rings are talking about TCFD's priorities and how would they finance, what kind of projects they would finance, and so on and so forth. But when we are talking about climate finance, we have to definitely talk about the International Capital Markets Association. That is also designing a lot of frameworks to really talk about how this impact reporting needs to be done globally. And we have tried to align our work with their work as well. With that, we do understand that communities are all across the world in different size, shape, and different phases of their progress. We would want to work with any and every community in this particular process, and looking forward to working with you, many of you in this particular process in coming days, weeks, and months. With that, I would like to introduce the speakers for today. Monte is going to talk about their very interesting two projects. Erin is going to talk about San Francisco Airport, and Stefano is going to talk about their Milan project. With that, let me try to stop my sharing my screen and invite Monte to talk about their very interesting project. Thank you again. for giving us this opportunity to the organizers and to you all for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vatsal. Are you folks seeing my screen here? And I'm going to go into full screen, and I'm actually going to mute what's coming out of here. I think as a co-host, we're getting all the bells and whistles every time someone joins, and that might throw me off track a little. So I'm trying to stay focused here, guys. Okay, you got my screen. Let's go into full. Sorry, 1 second here. Full screen. Are you still seeing my slides? Wonderful. Okay. My name is Monte Hilleman. I'm the Senior Vice President of Real Estate Development at the St. Paul Port Authority and the President of Port Consulting, our statewide consulting, third-party consulting arm. I'm going to be talking to you for a bit today about 2 projects. The first one is Upper Harbor Terminal. We are a consultant to the land developer and the master developer, United Properties, over in our sister city of Minneapolis. The second one is Hillcrest Golf Course, in which we are the owner and land developer ourselves of a 112-acre contaminated golf course. The Port Authority has been around for 80-some years. We were created to manage river commerce on the upper Mississippi. Commodities, millions of tons of commodities coming and going every year. And in the 1960s, we began doing inland urban redevelopment. And the 1990s really spearheaded our modern brownfield redevelopment era, and have 550 companies in 21 business centers with over 25,000 jobs across our city of St. Paul. Upper Harbor Terminal, as I said, is in our sister city of Minneapolis. This is a defunct and now being redeveloped shipping terminal on the upper Mississippi. You can see the aerial of it here. It has been cleaned up a bit, but is in a very diverse, largely low income, largely BIPOC neighborhood that is looking for investment after suffering years and years, decades, frankly, of disinvestment. This is an overview of the redevelopment program. You can see it is mixed use with everything from housing to a health and wellness hub, some light industrial. There is a big push in this neighborhood for urban agriculture, urban food manufacturing, processing, entrepreneurship. There is a proposed community performing arts center, First Avenue. If those of you are familiar with Prince, who's from Minneapolis, the nightclub in the movie Purple Rain is First Avenue. First Avenue would own and operate this performing arts center with some interesting components to it, right on the riverfront. About 20 acres, 500 some housing units, 300 jobs proposed, and about $300 million of development here. The overall master plan for this was just approved a couple weeks ago. Although there is, as of this week or last week, a lawsuit pending. One of the things I wanted to touch on here with Upper Harbor is there was a real push for wealth creation and equitable outcomes coming out of this development. So while the developer is a large commercial real estate developer owned by the Pohlad family that owns the Minnesota Twins baseball team, there was a real push to make sure that public ownership of the land itself was integral to this exercise. So you can see there's a lot going on in this diagram. I won't spend a ton of time on it because I know we want to get to climate stuff. But if you look way over on the right, you see a big red arrow that says a ticket fee, $3 a ticket for that First Avenue run performing arts center. There will be a surcharge of $3 a ticket that will go back to fund on an annual basis a to be created community development entity. In my past, I come from working for nonprofit community development corporations. This is estimated to generate between $500,000 and $750,000 a year to fund an organization like that. And for those types of organizations that do that shoe leather community development work, that is really an irreplaceable opportunity to fund an organization doing that kind of grassroots work. One of the other things Upper Harbor has looked at, both the development team and the general contractor working on the project at the moment, was looking at the entire project ecosystem with an equity lens. And you see here in the bottom left, it states the development team is committed to prioritizing and procuring this work, this project ecosystem, this 4 dozen scopes of work here with local BIPOC and North Minneapolis entities and employees. And so I think all too often we have this kind of myopic view of these big development projects. There's an owner, there's a developer, there's a big contractor. If looked through with that granular lens, there's an amazing amount of work in the supply chain, if you will, for development that could come from local and targeted vendors. And so this is something that Upper Harbor and the development team is pursuing very intentionally in advertising these scopes as the development gets going within the local community. Moving on to Hillcrest. We've done a bit more of the energy work and carbon work at Hillcrest. So I want to dive in here. It is a golf course, was a golf course created in the 1920s, largely to serve the city's Jewish community who was not allowed to golf at other courses. Looks like a golf course. It's a rather suburban location. It's on the very edge of the city of St. Paul. If you cross the street to the east, you're in a suburb. So it is a rather suburban location. We are in agreement with our partners at the city that we believe the site can absorb 1,000 jobs in about 1 million square feet of light industrial product, our specialty, about 1,000 housing units, including affordable housing with a drive toward permanently and deeply affordable housing, wetlands, parks, open space, trails, all sorts of amenities, but largely a residential, medium density residential and light industrial development. Here is a site plan laying out what this might look like in reality. The master plan has not yet been approved, but we're getting pretty close to something like this. What you'll see here, these big white boxes, these are single-story office warehouse buildings with job-dense businesses in them. That's what we specialize in, that really focus on attracting businesses that have living wage jobs with low barriers to entry. From an energy and carbon perspective, when I see these big flat roofs, I see fields of solar. And that is the game plan for Hillcrest, to use the big industrial roofs to produce enough solar to help net zero, to help net out the energy usage of the higher energy density and smaller rooftop residential uses. The site is a brownfield. It was contaminated, maybe not by this exact gentleman, but someone like this spraying mercury fungicide on the golf course, on the greens. It was used really until, I believe, the 1970s to prevent mold growth. And so there's contamination in basically every fairway, every tee box, every green that will have to be cleaned up. Again, that's what we specialize in. Getting to LEED for communities. So this is the scorecard. Vatsal had shared it earlier. And for this exercise, many times on these large redevelopment projects, there are aspirational goals at the front end. We want it to be net zero. We want it to be carbon free. But a lot of times those goals or proclamations are made by policy types or folks that maybe aren't necessarily practitioners. We said, we're going to figure this out, but we're going to help define what we mean by net zero or carbon free. We're going to figure out how to get there in terms of strategies. And we're going to put a price tag on it, and we're going to finance it. Figure out how to finance it, I should say. And we're on about step number 4. What LEED for Communities did in the bottom left under energy and greenhouse gas emissions, if you see energy and greenhouse gas emissions, and you can get up to 19 points. What LEED for Communities does is it provides a common language and common metrics. So we can all be talking about the same outcomes and the same strategies within this framework. So we can use LEED for Communities and the calculations required by US Green Building Council in this credit to basically step through the math to know that we are getting to net zero. We believe and have a game plan, figuring out the financing plan for Hillcrest to be net zero carbon, net zero energy for buildings, transportation, and land use, or excuse me, buildings, transportation, and infrastructure. We have baked and are baking wealth creation strategies throughout this project. Our workforce agreements are agreements with the businesses we attract to the site and we incentivize to come to the site. around job density, living wages, wealth creation strategies for their employees, et cetera. Vendor supplier diversity, we are diversifying our spend by dollars and by percentage of our vendor base. Just 2.0, I think I've got another slide I'll come back to on that. We're working on a local recruitment and job training program for the renewable energy deployment we're going to be doing out here. And again, I mentioned the strive to get deeply and permanently affordable housing. I'm not going to dig too much into the workforce agreements. That's just not really the focus of today, but enough to say that we are developing a new model, replacing a 30-year-old model for what these workforce agreements are, to focus more granularly on the social equity outcomes that we all want to see in these communities. While we've been doing this equitable and regenerative work, we're realizing that there are synergies between equity strategies and renewable, carbon-free, net zero regenerative strategies. In some ways, those are positive strategies. PACE, property assessed clean energy financing, could be an equity tool. The tax credits that a landlord receives in terms of federal investment tax credit and depreciation, a benevolent landlord could capture those in a gross lease model, pass some of those savings, some of that financial benefit onto their tenants for a targeted group or a targeted business that was being attracted to the site for a variety of reasons. Walkability and jobs. These are big industrial buildings. They aren't cute little 300-foot blocks that urban planners will tell us is what we want for walkability. But if I need a 12-acre site with a 200,000 square foot building on it to put 300 people in living wage jobs, we got to sacrifice something. So there are tensions between equity and regenerative development. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see obviously there are synergies, and we're daylighting and highlighting and solving for those synergies or amplifying those synergies as we need to as we move through the process. These are a few quotes from some of our community stakeholders. Again, I won't read these. This is our council member representing us, representing this project and this neighborhood on the St. Paul City Council. One of our workforce development partners, Eastside Employment Exchange, an entity that helps us connect with a dozen groups, nonprofit workforce service providers in the neighborhood to bring neighborhood residents to these businesses as potential job seekers. And one of our business association members talking about our partnership. JUST is International Living Future Institute's social justice scorecard, if you will. Very interesting, not going to dive into it, but we have required our largest engineering consultants on the project to pilot this with us. It is a contract term. They are doing the analysis and doing the research, and we expect to see some of that data very shortly. So when we began the drive for net zero at Hillcrest, we were asked to finish this sentence. We support a carbon-free community to the extent that it. And, that we don't price ourselves out of the market. We support a carbon-free community to the extent that we don't put the costs of building a carbon-free community onto the backs of a low-income, energy-burdened neighborhood already. We support a carbon-free community to the extent that it reduces social and economic disparities in our community. And we support a carbon-free community to the extent that it brings joy to our community. That's why we do this work. That's why I do this work, is to help relieve the burdens of our economy and bring the ability to share joy with our families and in our communities. These are some of the definitions we went through as we looked at the net zero approach here. We are talking about net zero carbon for scope 1 and scope 2. LEED for communities at this point doesn't portend including scope 3. However, somebody smart said to me the other day, your scope 3 emissions are someone else's scope 1 and 2 emissions. So we're going to get there eventually. This is part of the analysis that is required under the greenhouse gas emissions credit. There's a prerequisite that we meet in Minneapolis, St. Paul, just by by the basis of where we are at with our grid and our energy systems today. So we meet the prerequisite of about 9 tons per capita. And the greenhouse gas credit really looks at all of this in terms of tons per capita. If we did what we would normally do in a Port Authority development, we would get down to 4.4, which would get us 10 points in that greenhouse gas credit. Bundle 1 here deploys about 12 to 14 megawatts of solar on those industrial roofs. It requires everybody to build buildings that are 80 or 90% more efficient than what you would find in the marketplace. We deploy a district energy aquifer thermal energy storage system. I'll show you in a second. And we do a bunch of EV charging and EV car charging and rideshare work. Bundle 2, more aggressive. I don't know if we can get there in the marketplace. Bundle 1, we think we can. We're to 15 of 19 points to net zero. This is some of the costing, really. This is bundle 1 and bundle 1A, 1B. What we're showing here is that for these costs of, let's say, $74 to $89 million here, that there are savings in that same range. So at a gross level, this seemed to pencil out on day one. We now are getting down to financing. So obviously this analysis is getting quite a bit more layered. The energy strategies, I just ran through many of them. This is a version, actually it looks like this is an airport, Erin, using an aquifer thermal energy storage system, a closed loop system. You store hot and cool water in the aquifer. You use those thermal benefits to provide hot and chilled water, heating and cooling, thermal energy to these buildings. This is a new one. I don't think my colleagues have seen this yet. We are to the point now where we are calculating the rooftop solar that will power distributed heat pump equipment at the building locations. So we will use excess PV on the roof to power the heat pump equipment for the entire district system. And then each building will have its own heat pump equipment required to utilize that thermal energy. It's about a $36 million system, and we are just now approaching the state of Minnesota to assist with that. We are a PACE lender. We believe the building owners will PACE finance the equipment on the building side, and we will issue, we or someone will issue bonds for the remainder. We do own and operate a district energy utility already and issue bonds for that on a regular basis. So not something new to us. Powering it with solar, that's the new trick. And this, I think maybe is my last slide, is just a picture of one of our buildings. This is one of our projects in the Frogtown neighborhood in St. Paul, a very diverse, largely low-income neighborhood. There are dozens and dozens of living wage jobs with low barriers to entry in here. This is what we would think of as a light industrial building. It's not smokestacks. It's not something you wouldn't want to live next to. They're a very great neighbor, and this is a neighborhood urban farming operation that community gardens out here. And with that, I'll throw out some lessons learned here and let folks read those as I hand it off to my colleagues.
Thank you so much, Monte. I would request Erin to talk about your work now. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Monte, again.
Great, thank you so much. Just making sure everyone can see my screen. Awesome. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to join this really important dialogue and to share more from an airport's perspective of really what our boots on the ground approach has been to leverage several new rating systems to make sure that we're building back better from this current pandemic and broadening our social and environmental playbook to ensure our long-term operational and climate resilience. In this way, and certainly the remarks that I'll cover today, will talk about how SFO is mirroring the focus of our own federal government in embedding racial equity and climate across the fabric of all that we do. San Francisco Airport is located in Northern California, for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of joining us. And within Northern California, we're really a region in the state that continues to be the hardest hit by wildfires fueled by our changing climate. So we recognize that our ambitions of becoming the world's first net zero energy, net zero carbon, and zero waste airport campus has to be operationalized to recover and respond to the next climate hazard event during this current pandemic. We also recognize that and want to acknowledge always that SFO sits on the ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who were the original peoples of San Francisco, and that our airport centers in a region with a long history of civil rights activism that continues to be an equal weighted crisis of racial equity as we continue and work actively to address racial equity across the purpose of all that we do, and organizations like ourselves. So to that end, really today, what I'm going to focus on is talking about SFO's priority initiatives that are both aligned and embedded with LEED for Communities to showcase the way that our own interdisciplinary team has prioritized triple bottom line investments that have yielded dynamic operational benefits for both our airport, but also the health of our passengers, our workers, our surrounding community, to ensure a safe and sustainable purpose-driven return to service for our campus and our region. So SFO's mission is to be an exceptional airport in service to our communities, much aligned with the LEED for Communities' own objectives. In 2019, we welcomed 58 million guests. We had 470,000 aircraft operations, and we supported 46,000 direct jobs, $11 billion in business activity. Now, this year, with passenger activity down to about 50%, compared to 2019 levels, we're anticipating that it'll take about 4 to 5 years to return to pre-pandemic levels. This is obviously the economic context that we're facing, though what I'll highlight today, of course, is how climate continues to be a sustained priority and objective for our organization. I want to also mention that our airport is an enterprise department of the City and County of San Francisco, so we always strive to be on the leading edge of airport and environmental, social and sustainability initiatives while continuing to maintain and manage an efficient business. All of these goals for us really stand today as we're working to deliver our strategic plan, climate and social equity plans, capital plan, and now racial equity plan, all under a new recovery framework. Sustainability really for us always continues to be foundational across our operations, and we align our goals with that of our industry association, the Airport Council International, and among leaders that tasked SFO with achieving a new moonshot in 2015 that we codified in our strategic plan to achieve zero. So zero net energy, zero carbon and waste. And we've really made a lot of headway towards achieving those objectives, but have narrowed our focus in the last 3 years towards a new pathway towards recovery and resilience. So shown on this slide is really our roadmap to accomplish these goals, as well as the goals that have been set by our city and county of 0, 50, 100 routes, so zero waste to landfill, 50% of all trips by clean transportation, 100% renewable energy serving our campus, and then also routes focusing on ecosystems and ecosystem services, trees, native gardens, and composts. It's really important for us to note that these goals set for the airport and our facilities and our transportation systems do not just focus those that are under our direct operational control. We really prioritize ambitions that achieve zero to support our tenants in accomplishing these aims as well. So that for us includes our airlines, concessionaires, fixed-based operators that are all essential partners in achieving energy and waste reductions and key emissions mitigations across our supply chain, as they represent 99% of the emissions that arise at our airport, similarly to every airport in which they operate. Of course, for us, this always goes beyond carbon and focuses on things like biodiversity, green infrastructure, global and human health across all of our users. And there, obviously, we do this because there are social and environmental benefits that are the nexus of these activities. And so we want to just really highlight a few of those next, and really how LEED for Communities gave us the roadmap to accomplish this. Our airport's journey to recovery has to be focused beyond zero. So not just the resources and infrastructure and ecosystems that we impact, but the human systems as well. So herein for us lied the promise of adopting LEED for communities, which really gave us that glide path, how to stretch beyond our historic focus on greener buildings and healthy occupants to measures that would reach upstream and beyond our boundaries to the diverse communities that we serve. So here shown is our color-coded LEED for Communities checklist, where each of the measures that we adopted became part of our recovery and resilience plan. I'm going to spotlight a few briefly on the next few slides, and those are color-coded to match the last slide as well. So starting with the interconnected system and aims of resilience, health, and zero net energy. SFO is proud to be the home of the first zero net energy certified airport building in the world, but we're also working to apply what we've learned in delivering this facility to the 17 million other occupied square feet that we have on campus. So we design and operate and construct high performance buildings that use passive sources of energy, light, and heat, maximize efficiency through equipment selection in both our new buildings, but as well as optimizations and retro commissioning in existing. We're also adaptive to emerging climate hazards, so sea level rise, increased precipitation, and even pandemics, and are also all electric. These buildings are notably healthy buildings, including the first Fitwel certified terminal that really focuses on the best management practices of indoor air quality, product selection based upon low and no VOC content and emissions. We review EPDs and HPDs, health product declarations, environmental product declarations, and work on outdoor air filtration to capture and reduce particulates, as well as doing pre-occupancy indoor air testing. This is really important because we want to limit our occupancy, which is, in addition to improving the health within our buildings, we also are improving the health of the ecosystems that surround us. So we also manage and maintain a 100-acre preserve, the west of Bayshore, where we've also worked to stabilize 2 federally protected species, the San Francisco garter snake and the California red-legged frog. We're also proud of our work in our buildings and our baylands, but we think that we can really scale our impact by reducing the footprint of our passengers' origins and destinations. As we look to achieve a 50% emissions reductions from baseline this next year, we're also posturing to achieve a 92% emissions reduction by 2030 through the activation of an all-electric central plant, similar to what Monte showed on that slide. That may have been a graphic from SFO. That's now actually undergoing technical review and design development. This facility was also triple bottom line cost benefit analyzed and shows to be no additional cost to our campus operating over our current natural gas powered plants. We also expect to reduce transportation emissions through the activation of an all electric bus fleet. We purchased 8 of 14 vehicles already last year, the procurement of an all electric light duty vehicle fleet and carpool vehicles, and the deactivation of our CNG fleet, as we just extended our all-electric AirTrain station to our long-term parking garages. And like our peer airports, we always look to lead by example by expanding these amenities for environmental gains to all of our passengers and our tenants. To that end, we're planning for 2,400 new load managed EV chargers, including level 3 DC fast chargers to serve our ride sharing companies. That will now also operate on a incentive-based permit to fuel switch. And we continue to encourage all of our airlines, 70% of which already have commitments to uplift sustainable aviation fuel from SFO, to expand those active deliveries, which now come from 2 producers, one in Southern California and one via pipeline over the rack that's imported in. On to really quickly talking about zero waste, which obviously has a nexus when we start looking at consumption-based emissions. We are working on a very challenging pursuit with 180 concessionaires and 40 airlines on our campus to streamline the materials that they're bringing on campus, working on focusing upstream, to ban the sale of plastic beverage containers, expanded this year to include all bottles. And then also require that they use healthy third-party certified compostable products for all foodware and foodware accessories. Beyond these in-terminal concessionaires and retail vendors, we're also focusing on zero waste, including embodied carbon across our building projects through high diversion of 90% C&D, but also on material sourcing that prioritizes low carbon, locally sourced steel and carbon sequestering concrete. So shifting to the quality of life that I described at the beginning as the nexus of the climate work that we've been doing, as building owners and an airport who feels a strong sense of responsibility to safeguard our employees and the passengers traveling through our airports. We really have used LEED for Communities well and fit well as a template on how we can go further, moving beyond an airport that's known for yoga rooms and banning plastic water bottles to one that's using evidence-based standards like air, water, nourishment, thermal comfort, sound materials, and community to prioritize outcomes that we want to bring to our employees and passengers, such as reduced absenteeism, social equity across vulnerable populations, and the like. All of these for us that are shown on the screen really help us prioritize and balance the work-life wellness and balance, which has been really critical to a time when we are experiencing extreme mental and physical strain. Beyond that, we are also really focusing on building a work culture that is grounded in our core values and a workforce that is diverse and inclusive as our region and the millions of travelers that we serve. So to support our workforce in 2020, SFO formed a racial equity committee to look at our programs, policies, and opportunities to really advance racial equity. This group completed a phase 1 racial equity action plan in December 2020, which is assessing current conditions, identifying necessary resources, and holding ourselves accountable to measure these goals and commitments over time. And these actions in our plan will aim to represent and increase the representation of more diverse populations in our organization, expanding actually this year to focus also on airport delivery of services. These programs for us have always been very much focused on triple bottom line investment. Similar to what Monte showed in his performance outcomes, we do have an interdisciplinary committee that has prioritized $100 million investment in helping the airport achieve its objectives and aims. Shown here are the investment that we've done to reduce the energy use intensity of our buildings, those of which that have been activated under our current capital plan are now using 1/3 the energy of their building predecessors. We were able to do this just really using and leveraging a triple bottom line cost benefit analysis tool that allows us to move beyond CapEx, OpEx investments to quantify and monetize the financial, environmental, and social impacts over the lifetime of a net present value metric. This is incredibly important to really highlight and touch back what Vatsal said at the beginning, as we're preparing our ESG disclosures that will be going out to access new capital markets, being able to use a software that shows the total investment of our airport campus, those that are going to health and wellness measures, and those that achieve broader aims, we're finding to be incredibly compelling, both to rating accounting agencies and rating standards boards, which are really guiding the investment opportunities that we have available to us on our campus. So all of us, these are shown here really, and I know I need to wrap up, but have really just been the tools that have helped us build the longevity and really advance and approach new third-party rating certification programs for our campus, but have really emboldened the outcomes that we've achieved on our facilities. All of this is really for us. We want to make sure we're visualizing this and showing this across airport leadership, and then all of the individuals, our project teams that are making these investments, and then also can roll this out to broader communities to use a GIS dashboard that can show the certification programs, key outcomes, and key measures achieved on our campus. We also have worked to really codify and institutionalize this within a sustainable planning, design, and construction guideline so that every project in the future can really leverage what we've accomplished over our sustainability journey and embed this in future projects. as well as really visualize this to our customers. We think it's really important that as you're traveling through SFO, knowing we have a Bay Area community that has a strong environmental ethic, that we are showcasing information that's important and aligns with their value system, and also really touts and emphasizes our alignment with the work on well-being, zero waste, and also zero net carbon. So just to wrap up, for us, what was once a moonshot for our campus set for achieving zero has really been the playbook for purpose-driven pandemic response and economic recovery. It's adapted to our new operational environment, but has also inspired and ensured our business continuity and for both our organization, but also the organizations that surround us. Further, and most importantly, it is grounded in, driven by, and mission focused on safeguarding our climate, with the hope that SFO can become a model for airports, campuses, and cities countrywide and beyond.
Thank you so much, Erin. This is amazing. So much of good work. I can't stop raving about it. And thank you again for presenting it to us. Stefano, please talk about your good work. We are always similarly happy to know more from you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm going to share my screen and present Porta Nuova. Give me a sign that you see the presentation. Perfect. So I'm Stefano Corbella. I'm the Sustainability Officer of COIMA. COIMA is, we consider ourselves a real estate platform. We have investment management, asset and fund management, development management, and property and facility management. So what we do, we buy building, we improve the building for all aspects, obviously including ESG performances, and then we manage the building. So we follow the entire lifetime of the built environment and provide obviously a return to our investors. Today I'm going to speak about one of our key and milestone project is Porta Nuova. It's an area located in Milan, just out in the outskirts of the historic center. It's located here. That's the area back in the days, in the 50s. It was a railway yard, and after the 50s, that was left behind, basically not used, and the train station was moved back over here. And the land that was left behind was then used as you can see on the 80s, as you know, in a chaotic urban fabric, let's say, was used as a leftover. No, the train station was moved back, and the space in front of it again was poorly designed for an urbanistic standpoint. That was left there for decades. That is 2008, just before we start our work. We had a vision, and the vision was this project is a mixed-use development with offices, retail, commercial, but cultural buildings. We have a foundation, we have museums, and so on. But most important, it was a project that was hoping to reconnect the neighborhood that were around. No? Up here, there is the neighborhood called Isola, which is highland. And the name of highland was because it was an island in the city, because it was pretty much impossible to reach from the city center. Because in the middle, there was this scattered urban fabric with the former railway. No? So that is today. This is the project today. This is a photo taken a few months ago. We built the park. We created what was our vision. We developed the park and the Bosco Verticale, the famous residential building, and that was the first phase of the project. At the time, back in 2008, we were the first developer to introduce the LEED certification in the market. And we did it at scale. So all buildings LEED certified, first project of a scale that introduced that certification. Today, Milan is the third in Europe in terms of number of certification. There are 300 buildings certified now, and we have pretty much 50 of them, only us in the city of Milan. And that was the first phase one. Now, from 2014 onwards, we kept expanding the project, adding new pieces. And again, the strategy was to expand the quality of the urban fabric all around. And the most important things that kept everything together was the public spaces that we developed on behalf of the city of Milan. So we developed the 200,000 meters square of open space area. Some are private, some are public. We developed, we gave back to the city as a public park. And this scheme was pretty much keeping stitch every pieces of the building and the neighborhood around. So then what we did was to sign an agreement with the city of Milan to get the management of the public spaces that we developed for the city. Now we sign through a foundation, a non-profit foundation. We sign an agreement. We take care of the maintenance, the security of all public spaces, but most important, we manage the public space to provide the cultural events. Everything that happens into the these public spaces is managed by us through a foundation. So we create public events for our tenants, for arts and cultural events. That is a photo of this last summer. We organize a concert every year, free of charge for the public. Now, now the next step is working on the full digitalization of the neighborhood. We created an app. We're working on a full digitalization of the neighborhood. So we suddenly realized that we were not becoming from a traditional real estate operator which build hardware, so buildings and so on, to a community operator. So then we said we were thinking LEED and welfare community could help us in getting everything together for an environmental and health and well-being perspective at community scale. So as I said, all the buildings are already LEED certified. Some of the new building we were certifying also well. And then we said, because we manage everything, let's go for LEED and welfare community. So we bring everything together. We obviously are operating under the existing protocol. And the most important things that we said that is very interesting for the LEED for community is measurement. So it's very important that everything we do, we can measure, we can compare, and then we can improve. And the topics are very different and they're very relevant, especially if in the management of such a large area. So the natural system and ecology, we completed an ecosystem assessment. We then manage the park and everything that happens in the outside. We review the policy, especially for lighting, although in Italy there are specific pollution regulations for the lighting, but we revised our policy to make sure that was even better. And that is the park today. The interesting things that we already had, and that was an interesting things when we studied the LEED for community, we had several thematics area within the park providing services for the public. Kids playground, outdoor free gym, that was already embedded in our design and was already there. So when we started the LEED for community, we found that a lot of things were already embedded in our vision that was really interesting for that. Transportation and land use, that was an interesting things because the site is very, very well connected now. There are tube station around. We developed a cycling path, but most important, our scheme was to create all the area pedestrianized. So we lift up all the public spaces. Here, there is one of the major traffic road, but how we designed the site by lifting up everything. So the cars are below, and once you are in the piazza here above here, you have everything free of cars and is all pedestrianized, though that improved the quality of the area. And now we are running a program to electrify all the parking stations, all the parking plots within the basement in order to switch from fossil fuel to electrified mobility. I think, and our projection is that in the next 4 to 5 years, that will increase dramatically the number of people that will own an electric cars. Water efficiency, that is another interesting thing, also because it's very related to the next topic, which is energy and greenhouse gas emission performance. As Monte was showing before, the entire site is equipped with heat pumps, groundwater heat pumps. We have no use of fossil fuel, zero, not either for heating, cooling, or domestic hot water. Everything is produced through heat pump system with using geothermal. We are lucky because the first layer of aquifer in Milan is at 15 degrees Celsius. So perfect all year round, so perfect for the heat pumps. And that provides us the entire energy source for the entire site without any needs for fossil fuel. This had also a positive effect going forward, because by using electricity and taking into account the decarbonization of the national electrical grid, the carbon emission factor will drop over the year. And so we will improve over the year our carbon emission factor. No, in fact, as you can see, that is our mix. We have 100% from electricity. We buy 83% of the electricity from renewable energies, renewable purchase. We have only our marginal standard electricity part. That, by the way, the entire consumption includes the tenants, not only the landlord. So this is the entire portfolio and the entire performances. And this is an example of the latest project that we have developed. This needs a bit of explanation. On the left-hand side, you see two lines, colored lines. These are the European decarbonization pathway for Italy for office space. So those are now our target. So the office building in Italy need to decarbonize following this path. By not exceeding the 2 degree or the 1.5 degrees. This is the performance of the building that we just completed. That is the today projected carbon emission of the building. And because this building doesn't use any fossil fuel, by the decarbonization of the Italian network, that is the projected carbon emission from now to 2050, assuming standard consumption without any improvement along the line. No, so this is important because as you can see, we are below the 2 degree pathway, and we are crossing the 1.5 degrees in 2041. And this is assuming that we are not doing anything from now to 2041, which is unlikely. We hope obviously to improve over the line, over the years. And that this is our target for all new projects that we are doing. And this is the entire portfolio. See, Porta Nuova is currently most of the buildings are below the current carbon emission factor, which is this red line. For 2019, and obviously we are planning to implement all the decarbonization strategy throughout all building and throughout the portfolio to make sure that we will keep below the EU decarbonization pathway. Material and resources, that was another interesting thing, because as you can see, as you have seen, we have a lot of buildings. We have 200,000 square meters of public spaces. Waste management and monitoring is a huge topics. Unfortunately, in Italy, we have a law that, let's say, the tax that we pay for the waste is based on a square meter of the property and not based on the quantity of the waste produced. So that was one of the key difficulties that we had, because no one is measuring how much waste produced. There is a very strict control on the separation of waste. So everyone is pretty well in maintaining paper, glass, and plastic separated with a very, very high rate of control. But the quantity is not managed by no one, because, and there's no incentive because it's based on square meters. So either you produce 1 ton of waste or half of it, but you have the same amount of area, you pay the same amount of taxes. So that is one of the tricky part. We started to measure the waste because we want to give feedback to the tenant as well. This is not yet completed throughout the portfolio, but is an effort that worth to do, because obviously is helping us and the tenant to manage the waste in a much better way. Finally, that is one of my favorite in the LEED for community certification. That is quality of life. Because as you can imagine, the real estate developer not usually monitor or check what happened in the neighborhood, no? How what is the demographic of the neighborhood? There's no monitoring typically of what happening around your property, but because we are managing a site that is, you know, is quite big, then you are doing a community management. So the LEED for community pushed us to collect a lot of information, which I think is very interesting. They give us more information and more information to develop real estate strategy as well, no? Because we can now identify the characteristic of the community that lives around us, no? And that's it. That's very quickly to show you the work that we are doing. I think the most important thing is that once we realized that we were managing, we had the possibility to manage a community. We had to do it properly. And I think LEED and Welfare Community that supported us in several topics that we wouldn't have monitored as well.
Thank you, Stefano. As I have been saying, all 3 of your stories and the projects that you are doing are so inspirational all across the world. So I think it's always fun to chat with you, obviously, formally or informally, and get to know more about it again and again. With that, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us. Unfortunately, we are out of time right now, but I once again wanted to thank Catherine, wanted to thank US Climate Center at COP26, and thank you all for joining us. It's an amazing opportunity for us to get together and talk about this thing. Once again, I wanted to thank Erin, Monte, and Stefano for talking to us.